Got it.
Okay. All right. So let's just start with a simple question.
Mhm.
How you doing?
What's up, man? Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure because I haven't uploaded in a while.
Mhm.
Last one was Michael Nugent a few months ago. I felt kind of bad about that one because I felt like I was just asking him a bunch of dumbass questions and just calling it a day. But
Well, maybe an introduction or something, I guess would be underway. Like I said, if anybody doesn't know me, my name is Alf Benny. I do edited videos on my channel of the Young Turks where I make fun of them in goofy edits and make my own music and make them sing strange songs. But
they
it's
do
a
make it easy.
niche kind of channel. I guess like it's not for everyone, but it's a little odd, but some people like it.
The Young Turks are pretty easy to make fun of.
Hmm.
I can remember the first time I've seen them. I think I was 13, maybe 14.
Hmm.
I forgot what it was. I think it was like the whole Fox News lady saying that Jesus and Santa are white. I think it was them reacting.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people have a memory of TYT from a while. They've been doing this for like 20 years, right? A lot of people have a
Mhm.
fond memory of them in the earlier days. But there was a moment where they switched and became more SJWE, I guess we would say, and also just very defamatory, where anybody they would yell at them. A famous thing that I make fun of is Cenk saying Republicans are monsters, and he's just constantly calling Republican monsters with zero charitability to the opposing party. Right?
Yeah, I just have not watched him at all. I just
Mm-hmm.
remember them going woke and just
Yeah.
really paid attention. I remember like during the mid 2010s, I think that's like when the rise of like the third wave feminists and everything like
Mm-hmm.
SJW was underway.
Right.
And just teenage me, just being the liberal atheist, seeing all this shit and just thinking to myself, well, this is fucking retarded. The Young Turks just disappeared from my mind. I just did not pay attention to them.
Nah. I think for me, I have a friend who I was a YouTuber. He's on Censored TV now. His name's Atheism Was Stoppable. His name's real
Love
name's
them.
Devin Tracy. But that's really when like I used to watch some Young Turks, so I wasn't that big into watching. Just like you said with yourself, I felt the same way. Like just every once in a while, I would see a clip. But he really started breaking them down and making videos on how ridiculous their arguments would be and how they act. And that's what started off for me now watching them and reacting and making fun of them and stuff. It came from there. Oh, and also Sean, I don't know if you know actual justice warrior Sean
Oh
Fitzgerald.
yeah.
He also makes a lot of videos on them too.
Yeah, I'm subscribed to both of them. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember Atheism is Unstoppable. He just uploaded like other like random clips and stuff. My first one was the Oprah versus atheism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
big start on internet atheism. Was watching him back in the day, right when it first started, when he first started.
the thing is, I actually had no idea he uploaded his own like commentaries, his own like reaction videos
Mm-hmm.
until pretty recently. Actually, I found out during 2020 that he actually makes like similar videos like Repzion or Jack and Glenn or Amazing or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
because there was like the George Floyd riots with the whole
Right.
BLM stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother, he actually was subscribed to Atheism is Unstoppable, which I didn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that he was pissed off because he just got banned from YouTube again.
Yeah, it's a constant struggle, but a lot of these, like you called yourself a liberal. I also called myself a liberal. I've voted Democrat most of my life, but there is a faction of the liberalism that takes it way too far, and
Hmm.
you just can't even say certain words, right? So it's like they don't even care what the nuance is. If you talk about a certain topic, even if you're not talking about it in a racist way, or even if you're not talking about it in that much of a negative or stereotypical way, they just instantly take it that way and ban you, right? You can't even. There was a moment where he kept getting strikes on his channel just for using the word white on the title because they would
Really?
instantly realize, oh, he's talking about race, ban him, right? Like, so he had to start spelling it different. He would start spelling it WIGHT. Also, he calls black people bleeps now, and a lot of people think that's a like a dog whistle for a racist word he's trying to say for them. But the truth is, he had to start saying that when he was on YouTube because they would ban him every time he would say the word black in a video. So he realized if I don't use that word and I use a different word instead, they won't, they won't block me.
Uh, I always thought it was a joke. Like I just thought it was funny that it
Mhm.
kept saying beliefs, but that
Yeah,
makes a lot more sense.
yeah, it's a joke with a history, right? That has a reason why he uses that. Because the second he uses the word black, they would ban him or demonetize him or whatever.
So, do you still consider yourself a liberal, or did you prefer a different word now?
Oh no, I'm definitely still a liberal.
Oh,
I
okay.
have this thing, there's a lot of people who like do the why I left the left movement and stuff. I'm not one of those people. I'm staying steadfast where I am. Right? And I just call out, this is why I make videos on TWT and other really progressive people, because I'm staying where I am and I want to call out all the people that are pushing the left further left instead of leaving it where it is, right?
Mm,
Where we are at this moment. But there is a big pushing it further left. But like you say, you don't watch too much TYT, but recently they have even woken up to this, that people are pushing it too far left. And even Anna Kasparian now is calling out crime. She's, going, saying that the pro trans people are pushing it too far and trying to push things that are ridiculous instead of being realistic, which gives them a bad name, right? And they're starting to recognize just that they're strategy of pushing too hard or slandering people that don't agree with them and stuff has been a negative impact all this time, right? And they're slowly, I'm slowly watching them and slowly seeing them change and become a little more centered, right? As opposed to being so far left, right?
mhm. Yeah. As for me, I never really been that far left.
Mm-hmm.
How about you? Like, did you ever think you were like too left wing? Like, did you ever?
No, I'm like kind of like I'm older. I'm 44, so I grew up in a different time, right? So
Mhm.
Democrats when I was a kid were way more calm. They didn't push such crazy things. So for me, it's like the left has gotten more and more left as I've been getting older, and I'm trying to figure out to like keep it where it is, right, and keep the center where it is, and not push it, not move the Overton window too much. Right?
It's like that cartoon that I think Colin Wright made with the fellow liberal, and then like the right, and then like the fellow liberal moved way too far left, and now
Mm-hmm.
you're like right leaning.
Right. And now, but if you look at it now it's a huge thing of we have far right and far left people. And now what you
Hmm.
see with the current Israel and Palestine stuff, it's like a horseshoe effect where the far right and the far left are agreeing on this, right? And they're kind of meeting in the middle and agreeing with each other that they're both anti-Israel, right? And I
Yeah, I
think
noticed
that's
that
why.
too. Like it just seems
Mhm.
like the sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off right
No, no,
there.
it's fine.
It just it's like it's weird. Like the communists and the Nazis, they both hate
Yeah.
Jews.
Yeah. So they're
That's
finding common ground on that. It's strange.
yeah,
I
it's
think I
just
made a post recently. Somebody posted something. I think there. Oh, it was Kyle Kalinske, who's a far left commentator, and he
mm,
posted some sort of meme of the anti-Israel meme. But I looked right under it, another account called Right Wing Cope. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They make fun of right wingers and post right wing stuff. He basically tells Kyle Kalinske, I don't know if you know this, but that's a Nick Fuentes post.
oh
that
shit.
meme was made by the Grapers, and that's Nick Fuentes. So I reposted. I said, isn't it funny that now we can't tell the difference whether someone is far right or far left? It looks exactly the same now. It's kind of
Yeah,
humorous that the
yeah.
horseshoe effect is real, right? Like they really do
Mhm.
meet up at the tip and agree with each other.
Yeah, it's just like really weird, like especially with on Instagram. Some
Mhm.
of my friends, some people I just know, both like the progressives, some of like the little farther to the right, they just both really hate Israel. I never understood that. Um,
Mhm.
it seems weird, like the fact that a lot of these progressives, if they went to Gaza, they wouldn't have the same rights they do now. If they went to Israel, they would.
Mhm.
It just seems really weird to me. The conservatives who are most conservatives, as far as I know, are pro-Israel. I could be wrong, but
Right.
some
It's I think it's the most conservatives are, but I think the further right you go, the more anti-Jewish they get, right? And you see more
yeah.
anti-Jewish people that it's really a bigotry. There's a guy, Jake Shields, that was a former MMA fighter, and he just posts Hamas propaganda all the time. But he always says he'll put out tweets like, oh, if you criticize Israel, they automatically call you an anti-Semite. I'm like, it's not your criticisms that make them call you that. It's your like lack of skepticism for one side and total belief of the other side. It's like
Yeah, like
any
this.
propaganda from one side, he believes it right away, but then the other side, he's like, "Oh, I don't know if I should believe this. Israel lies." And it's like Hamas doesn't lie. Like, seems odd to be skeptical of only one.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with my brother earlier this morning. We was talking about the like which countries actually have access to nuclear weapons. Israel's one of them.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, like, I don't understand the whole America First crowd then, because if we don't back Israel and Hamas wins and they take over Israel, they
Oh
act like
yeah.
it's not our problem because, America first, stay out of it.
Mhm.
We have to do what's best for us. I just thought to myself, and I post this on Instagram too. I said, uh, if Hamas wins and they take over Israel, they're going to have access to nuclear weapons. How the fuck is that not our problem?
Yeah, that's like the worst outcome that can happen out of this. But it's even I don't know. I think a lot of it is bias. For progressives, a big part is they always root for the underdog or the weaker. They don't really care who's in the right. They vote for the weaker, right? It's the same when they're calling out like police or something for beating up a minority. They'll always side with the minority regardless of who was in the right in the situation because one is weaker than the other. That's just the way they view it. So they'll always back the underdog. For the right, I think it's more of a bias of hatred towards a certain group and not the other. But if you are a person who just looks at history and you're unbiased and you go by the principle of not picking a side and just go through history and see the conflict and how it's gone from beginning to now, you would have to pick Israel because they are the ones who have been in the right this whole time. That's not to say that Israel's never done anything bad. Obviously, they've definitely done bad. They've committed some things that we could probably call war crimes in history. But in the end, almost every single time, it has been the Arab side that has caused the conflict, right? They're always the ones who reject any kind of compromise, any kind of partition plan has been denied by the Arab side. And they don't just deny it, they deny it and attack. Right. It's not like, oh, we deny it. We want to go back to the table, negotiate again. Right. They just deny and attack, deny and attack. Right. But yet they always play the victim. Right?
Yeah, that seems really weird. What about do you think most atheists, just in general in the U.S., support Israel? Because I always find like see they seem kind of mixed to me.
I can see that. I think in general atheists do because one, especially if we're going if they're focused on a religious aspect, because like Palestine's way more religious when it comes to their Muslim religion than
Yeah.
Israel is when it comes to their Jewish religion, right? Like I think Israel's probably like either the second or third most secular country in the world or something like that.
Yeah, if, I think it was like 70% don't really identify as religious,
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
remember.
Most of the people there who still practice the religion is mostly for tradition and not really because they fully believe that it's real, that God's real or anything. It's the same with Japan. Japan has the same thing. They have a Shinto belief religion,
Yeah.
but over 80% of them don't believe it's real and they just practice it as a national tradition, right? But when they're polled, they say, no, there's no such thing as these spirits or anything. We just do it for tradition.
Yeah, I happen to have some friends in different countries.
Mm-hmm.
I do have this one friend from Japan. I was actually kind of curious because I want to get more into meditation, and
Mm-hmm.
but I was also into the idea of like ancestor worship, which is a Shinto idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I was asking her, is meditation a part of Shinto traditions too? And she's like, yeah, I have no idea what that is.
She doesn't even know what meditation is or Shintoism.
The Shinto,
Oh.
she knows what meditation is, but she doesn't know
Mm-hmm.
anything about Shintoism. She's like, yeah, we don't practice anything. We don't get involved in
Mm-hmm.
anything. I just have no idea.
Yeah, that's only for like it's like at this point it's only passed down through family. So if your family's not passing it down to you, you probably have no idea about it, right? Because I think they stopped believing in Shinto back in after World War II. It's just been kept as a tradition at this point.
Yeah, I also have a few friends in Israel, two of them only, but one of them she's actually in the Israeli army. We've been exchanging some emails for a while now. Uh, I think she joined about 2 years ago, which
Mhm.
was interesting.
Yeah, I think it's mandatory there, right? I think once you reach a
Yeah,
certain age, you have to join.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
strange. I don't know if you've been keeping track with H3H3 and the Hassan Piker stuff.
I
And
have not.
okay, so this guy from the show H3H3, his name's Ethan Klein. He's married to a
Mhm.
woman in Gila who is from Israel, right? So they got married. They met in Israel. He brought over, and he was hanging out with Hassan Piker, which is the nephew of Cenk Uygur from TYT, right? Who's the most popular streamer right now, but he's super progressive, and he's right now he's totally anti-Israel, while working with this guy whose wife is from Israel. He's Jewish too, and that created a huge conflict between them. But the point was Hassan Piker's audience was calling Ethan's wife a genocider and murderer because she was in the Israeli army. She was in the IDF. Obviously, she's from Israel, and you have to be in it. So Ethan's was like, yeah, you have to be in it. It's not like she chose to join the military. And on top of that, she was a receptionist for the military. She didn't even see combat. So it's like that. This is how vile the people are. That the second they hear you're a part of one side, they just think the worst, and there's charitability goes out the window, and it's just you're a baby killer, you're this and that, right? And it's like I worked as a secretary for the army. What are you talking about, right?
I do find it really disturbing just how much hate Israel
Mm-hmm.
gets. When I was on Twitter or X, whatever the fuck you want to call it, I did
Yeah.
see some celebrities promoting like Israel, which actually kind of surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
People like Mark Hamill was like stand with Israel, and I don't know if you are a
Mm-hmm.
Mark Hamill fan, but he's
Yeah,
very
yeah, I am.
progressive.
Yeah, he's super
Okay.
progressive. I often disagree with him, but I follow him because I've loved him since I was a kid, being Luke Skywalker and the Joker in the animated Batman show.
Yeah, wait, his Joker is the best. Can't
Yeah,
top
he's
that.
my favorite Joker of all time. So
Yeah, but we're never getting that again after
as
Kevin
another
Conroy.
one is Stephen King. He's also super progressive.
Mm. Oh, is he
I'm a big fan
pro-Israel?
of his horror books since I was a kid, and yeah, he is pro-Israel as well on this. So it kind of make even so it's true that we have progressive people that are also pro-Israel, and right-wing people who are, but I don't know, it's a strange crossroad people meet at, that they can't separate their bias from the situation to see who's in the right. Nobody wants to see a bunch of Palestinian kids get killed, right? So it's weird when they're like, oh, genocide, blah, blah, blah. Nobody wants to see that. But also, it's crazy when you see these people talk about genocide and attack on Palestine, but they never seem to mention the hostages that Gaza took,
Yeah.
right? Like there's still over 200 hostages being held. It's been over a month. It's been like a month and a half, and they're still being held. And yet, all these tweets, nobody's saying free Palestine, but free the hostages, right? Nobody says that. They
Yeah.
just always just say it's a genocide. They want genocide. Like, they want them to release the hostages. That's what they want, right?
Yeah, I remember when I was trying to get into this, I think I was maybe 17 or 18.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised seeing some people like Christopher Hitchens, who was really, I might be wrong, but coming across as extremely anti-Israel. Um, which I
You
thought it
might
would
be
have
right.
been
I
the
think I do
okay.
remember him being anti-Israel. I think you're right.
Okay, because I thought like maybe I remember I thought I saw like a tweet by Richard Dawkins also being
Mm-hmm.
anti-Israel. And I was a little surprised. I thought this would be like more obvious for like the some of my favorite new atheists. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to go to Sam Harris, and I remember reading the transcript for his podcast talking about why he doesn't criticize Israel, and I was so glad reading that from him.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I know we're supposed to hate Sam Harris now
Oh no,
because of
he's one of my
TDS or
favorites.
whatever, but I like him.
I never got the criticism of Sam Harris. I think for a lot of people, it's because he doesn't like Trump, and a lot of those people that dislike him are Trump fans. So the instantly when he criticizes Trump, they're like, "Oh, TDS." But the truth is, if you listen to him and don't straw man and just listen to him well, you'll realize that his complaints are legitimate. You might not agree with the complaints, but that doesn't make them invalid complaints, right? Like they're his own personal complaints, and they're pretty valid. But people take them and they just instantly hear it and go, oh, he's got TDS and he's not being, he's being irrational. I don't think he is being irrational. There was one thing with the COVID stuff where he said
Yeah,
something. Yeah, people were mad about that, but I think he made a salient point that's very true when he says, yes, we can give people the ability to search things for themselves and look at studies, but does that mean that people understand what they're seeing, right? And
yeah,
people took that as, oh, we should hide things from people and not let them see it. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is some people just aren't educated enough to understand what they're reading in studies. And if you're a person who's been in debates or on Twitter and been part of these like back and forths, you do recognize that some people will post studies. And when you look at it, it says the opposite of what they're saying it says, right? So it
yeah.
is true. There's a large portion of people out there who you can give them all the information, but that doesn't mean that they're going to understand that information properly, right?
Yeah,
So I think what he's really saying there is that we need more educated people who understand studies better, right? And understand what's going on when they read these citations.
yeah, that's what I got from it too.
Mhm.
Because he does like I think you and I are probably one of the more sympathetic ones. You probably like him more than I do.
Mhm.
I've always been a Sam Harris fan. I
Yeah,
listened
me
to the
too.
trigonometry episode. I remember like the joke he made about like if what was it, like if there were corpses on the
Is then the
laptop, I would
part,
not
yeah.
vote. Yeah, I thought, okay, that's kind of a fucked up thing to say, but like
Mhm.
I get what it's trying to say. Like whether you agree
Yeah.
with it or not, like I don't think it's actually saying like it's not a big deal because
Mhm.
as long as we pay attention to Trump, I just I think he's just trying to say that Trump is just such a big threat that
Mhm.
I get like all these other issues exist, but we shouldn't
Oh,
let
it's
that
also
distract
the
us from
point that it's also the point of like what Joe Biden's son does isn't as bad as what Trump himself is doing, right? So why would you
Trump.
judge Joe Biden by his son before you judge Trump for his own actions, right? So it kind of doesn't make sense. Yeah, if his son had a bunch of dead kids in the basement, does that mean now Joe Biden himself is better or worse than Trump? It doesn't really affect that, right? You would be voting for Joe Biden for his ability to lead, not for what his son does, right?
Yeah.
But in the end, this all leads to something I was talking about earlier about charitability. And it's if you're going into an argument or listening to somebody already with the intention that this person is spreading a negative aspect of what you want or anything of what the discussion is, you're automatically hearing it as bad as the worst that can possibly come out, right? But if you're a charitable person, which I believe is the best way to listen to people, the best way to have discussions, is to be charitable. And when you hear something that might sound wrong, you either ask them to explain it better or you take the best interpretation of it instead of the worst, right? Taking the worst just means you always think the person's trying to say the worst thing possible, right? Which nobody really does. Nobody comes into an argument and go, I'm going to be the meanest, evilest person in the world, right? You come into arguments trying to convince the other side that you're right. So you should really listen to people with a charitable spirit, right?
Yeah, back on the comments you made about like doing research,
Mm-hmm.
that actually reminds me of an anecdote. I used to have this one friend. I'm not friends with him anymore because he's a fucking asshole. But he and his dad are like were total anti-vaxxers, just kind of like just really whiny about the COVID stuff and the lockdowns and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I think he assumed that I was an anti-vaxxer too. I don't think he realized I was triple vax at this point. But he was on the phone with me and he starts telling me, oh yeah, he's also a pathological liar. Just gonna throw that in there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he he's on the phone with me and he tells me, oh yeah, in the UK they're putting unvaccinated people into isolation camps. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah. And I said, that doesn't sound right. And he tells me, oh no, it's true. My dad saw it on Facebook.
Oh, God, Facebook's like the worst place for
The
information.
the part though that bothered me wasn't that it was on Facebook, it was the
Mhm.
fact that his dad saw it because his dad's the dumbest motherfucker I know. So I actually like after we were off the phone, I immediately Google this and I find that screenshot. It was quoting like this expert or whatever, and I said, "Is this the post your dad saw?" And he says, "I think so. It looks similar." Then I said, "Yeah, this is a parody account."
They don't even notice that. They don't even look. But that leads to a confirmation bias, right? Because everything you see, if it agrees with you, you're going to immediately accept it, and you have no skepticism for it, right? Like that's basically what he did. He saw a
Yeah,
post that agreed with how he felt, and he just said, "Oh, that must be real." shared it right away and told people about it instead of like looking into it.
Like, even if you're anti-lockdown or you're like scared of
Mm-hmm.
the vaccines and think they don't do jack shit, you have to admit, like, even from that perspective, saying they're putting unvaccinated people into isolation camps, that doesn't sound realistic at all.
No, it doesn't. They did a similar thing in Canada where Trudeau was where if you came into the country, Trudeau had a hotel that he like rented out or whatever the nation emptied out a hotel and rented it for people to stay at to basically quarantine for the 2 weeks, right? But what
Mhm.
happens is, of course, everybody wants to take it as horrible as possible, and they go on, "Oh, it's a concentration camp. It's this and that." You know what I'm saying? Oh, that this is going to go on forever. They're going to separate people and this and that. I remember Ian Mouse Chong's another person on Twitter that spreads a lot of propaganda. He was one who was like saying during the whole COVID thing, "This is the new normal. We're going to be wearing masks forever," and then masks go away. And what does he take that back? Does he say, "Oh, I was wrong"? No, he just ignores that, right? Even at one point, was it like I think it was like two or maybe a year and a half ago, he said, by July next year, masks will be back. Here we are in November, no masks back. So it's like, there is a culture of like fear mongering, and it is incentivized. So if you could go out and say the most extreme things, say the most negative things, get people scared, that's how you make money on places like Twitter and Facebook. It's incentivized. These people might not even believe these things, but they know they make money when they do it, so they keep doing it.
Mhm. It uh what else? I kind of wanted to mention the Ukraine situation
Mm-hmm.
because I do have a friend who's in Ukraine too. Yeah, I have so many oppressed friends. But yeah, I remember like thinking hearing like all these stuff about Zelensky and the most recent one. They had like a standing ovation for a literal Nazi. And I remember even Andy Ngo got on that, which
Mm-hmm.
kind of bothered me because I always thought of Andy Ngo as like an objective journalist, but he seems a little bit more opinionated lately. Um, I was looking at that and I was thinking to myself, did all of you fucking know that guy who that guy was before this?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that leads to the charitability. Like they might have not known, but instantly they're like, "You see, he's cheering a Nazi. They love Nazis." And it's like, well, if you were being charitable, you saw that information, you might be like, maybe they didn't know he was a Nazi, right? Before they cheered him. I don't even,
Yeah.
I remember the situation and hearing about it, but I didn't even look into it. So I don't even know if the guy was really a Nazi or not. I have no concept of
I just immediately Googled it and was here. I was just reading it about a few articles about it, but
that.
to
Mm-hmm.
be fair, that just happened, so there might be
Yeah,
more
it
info.
wasn't that long ago. I didn't look into it too much, but I do remember everybody saying, "Look, they're cheering a Nazi in Canada Parliament." And I was like, "That's probably either they're lying about this guy or they didn't
Yeah,
know who he was when they were cheering him." So,
yeah,
but
because
that's what I
everybody,
mean about always looking at things with some sort of charitability as opposed to just always looking for the negative, right?
yeah, 'cause everybody loves the Nazi card.
Mm-hmm. It's
I
an
remember,
easy card to play. It's the greatest villains of the West, for the last 80 years, right? So people love to pull that card out.
I remember Euron Brook was supporting Ukraine, and I quoted his tweets, and
Mhm.
I was talking about like how many people were just getting on his ass over this, and it's just do people just not believe in self-defense? And then Euron Brook
Mhm.
retweets me. And of course, that led to a bunch of assholes
Oh no,
replying to
of
me,
course.
and some people were like, they're defending themselves against NATO. And then some guy sends me fucking Nazis and goes, I defend myself against these people too, which is such a smug thing to say.
Mhm.
But I told my friend about it, the one in Ukraine. I immediately showed him this.
Mhm.
And yeah, he just immediately shuts this stuff down for me, which is great. I love not having to do research. But but yeah, they're like these small group of nationalists in Ukraine, and they're not supported by the people. They're not supported by the government. Definitely not supported by Zelensky.
I had an argument with someone about this, and I put it this way: if we were under invasion, I'm saying like America, let's say somehow Mexico became a world power and became stronger than us and started invading California, we would not care if our militias had, neo-Nazis in it, white supremacy. None of that would matter. Every citizen in America becomes a militia member, right? And it wouldn't matter what their ideals are as long as they're fighting for America. That's all that would matter. Same thing goes with Ukraine. If they have a battalion that happen to be Nazis, who cares? They're defending their nation, and that's the whole point. Every nation, and I'm glad you brought up the self-defense thing because I feel the same thing with Israel. Is the same concept. Is they were under attack. They have the right to defend themselves. I got into an argument with the other day with a guy who was trying to say something about this, and I know they were a right winger, so I brought up Kyle Rittenhouse, right? And I'm like, imagine the situation, but it's Kyle Rittenhouse, right? He had the right to self-defense. Now, people on the left were calling him a white supremacist, a proud boy, all these things that to say that they don't like him or that he's evil or something. Does that take away his right to self-defense because people think he's evil or he's a Nazi? No, he still has the right to defend himself if somebody attacks him. And so does Israel, so does Ukraine, regardless if they have Nazis in their army or not, doesn't matter. It's all on the side to just basically pick something to hate on them for, pick the other side.
Yeah, I remember when the Ukraine situation first happened, the first things I saw was Dan Crenshaw supporting Ukraine. And then Douglas Murray was posting some articles he wrote supporting Ukraine, and I was seeing like a bunch of like left-wing protesters in favor of Ukraine. I remember thinking to myself, "Oh shit, are we finally uniting both sides? This is the one thing everybody's in agreement about." But then no, I was wrong, and I see like a lot more right-wing conservative Republicans talking shit about Ukraine, and I
Mm-hmm.
thought, "Oh God damn it."
Yeah, and it's crazy because right wingers are usually really big on the principles of self defense. So it's strange to think that a sovereign nation would get invaded and they would not believe in the self defense of that nation, right? It just doesn't make sense. It's
Yeah,
also like just a duty of any nation to protect its citizens, right? So if anybody's
yeah.
attacking any unarmed civilians of a nation, it's the duty of the leaders to retaliate, defend. You know, you can't just imagine why would you live in a country where your president or your leader just lets unarmed civilians get kidnapped and held hostage or invaded, right? Like, why would you want to live in that country? You would instantly move out, right? And go to a country
Mhm.
where they will protect you.
Um, I was about to mention something else. Forgot.
Oh, sorry.
So, you're good.
Yeah,
No, I'm just retarded. But
no, it's all good.
what was it? Ukraine. Not important. We'll get back to it later. But what would be a good topic now? Now I'm drawing a blank.
Let's see. We went through Israel, Ukraine, atheism, kind of. What do you think? Do you think atheism's growing more, or do
Well,
you
it's
think
definitely.
there's a step back going with atheism? Do you think it's kind of stepping back, or you think it's growing more?
I think it's definitely on the rise.
Yeah.
Definitely around the entire planet,
I'm
even.
seeing a lot more people. There's a thing that I saw, like, we had our little atheist moment from like 2014 to like 2018, 2019, and it kind of flipped away from that. I think mostly because we stopped having anything to talk about with it. Like everything that had to be said about atheism was said. The creationists were destroyed, right? The anti-evolutionists were
Mhm.
destroyed. But then we moved on from that. And now I see almost a reversal where people make fun of atheists, right? So whenever you're trying to bring up, oh, well, there is no God, or so then they do the, oh, look, fedora. They try to like make fun of atheists. I feel, and then there was a rise of group of people who are like cultural Christians. So technically they're atheists, but they want to live as if they were Christians because they say, oh, America was founded by Christians. That makes everything better for some reason. So they, even though they don't believe that God is real or that Christian God is real, they still want to live as if Christianity, I guess traditionally, right? They still want to live through the traditions of that. Which I guess is fine, but it is kind of strange. To me, it seems like a crutch. Like you can't get through life, so you need to have a crutch to get through it by believing in something that's not real.
Yeah.
Strange to me.
I never believed the whole God-shaped hole in society thing. I hear that
No.
all the time.
Mm-hmm.
People always say like, we need Christianity. Our nation was founded as a Christian nation,
Mm-hmm.
and all these stuff I just like clearly aren't true.
Now,
And
everything that happens has growing pains, right? So there's always like a counterculture and stuff. So when like the things that are happening now, we got internet. There's all this like free access to pornography, people talking in ways that they've never communicated before, ideas they've never heard are rushing into our brains at such a speed that's never happened before. All these things take time to adjust to. So where a lot of people see problems with these things and they want to, their reflex is to go, let's go back, let's go back. You know what I'm saying? Like things are going bad, let's go backwards, let's go back to what where things were safe and we can, hug a pillow and we're safe. But really the thing is, like I said, everything has growing pains. So there's gonna be problems moving forward that we need to adjust to instead. We adjust to the problems, fix those, and keep moving forward, as opposed to going back to where we felt safe, right? Like if we keep going back to where it felt safe, where we're gonna all turn into Amish people at some point, right? We can't do that, right? We got to move forward.
Yeah, I think it's like a bit of like a nostalgia for them, like an
Mm-hmm.
idealization of the past. Because
Right.
yeah, this is where we grew up at. This is the stupid stuff people were bitching about at the time. And because that's what I grew up with, that
Right.
means it wasn't as bad as the stupid shit people are complaining about now. And
Yeah.
if we're being realistic, though, that's a bit of a false dichotomy. It's like, well, we could either have people promoting like all this Christian nationalist creationist stuff, or we're gonna have all this woke uh trans trans women or women, gender
Mm-hmm.
social construct stuff. And I thought we don't have to pick between those two. We could just
Right.
support reason and logic like we've always been doing.
That's what I'm saying. All that stuff, like my personal belief is all that stuff, like the trans stuff that's going on, all that is part of what I'm saying is growing pains. Where we're coming about breaking through boundaries, coming about new ideas. Some of those ideas are going to make it worse, some make it better, some are going to cause problems. In the end, we have to keep moving forward and try to fix problems or try to adjust our lifestyles to those problems, because it's never, you can't fight progression, right? Like when I don't know if there's an old folk tale of a character, John Henry, who tries to fight against the machines. The machine has taken his job and he's like, no machine will ever be better than me at this job, right? So he tries to fight the machine at the job and he works himself to death where the machine will keep going, right? So it's kind of a good analogy to say with advancement and progress and even technology like AI and stuff like that, instead of, we can't fight it. There's no way that we can stifle it completely. It, it's always going to come out. So the best thing to do for us is to adjust with it, advance with it, work with it, and to the best of our ability to make it go in the way we want it to go instead of letting it go out of control, right?
Mm.
And that's how we have to deal with advancement, right? Not we're
Yeah.
gonna, if we go too fast and don't adjust, we're gonna kill ourselves. If we go backwards, we're gonna make it worse, right? We'll be doing child sacrifices again. So
I
that's
remember oh sorry, you were saying something?
no, go ahead.
I remember I was thinking about it, the whole good old days versus like all the stuff
Mm-hmm.
now. And I remember I just randomly went on my Instagram and I just started just fucking with that idea. And I just posted just random stories going, this generation's so sensitive. They're offended by gay jokes. Back in my day, we were offended by gay people in general. This generation's
That's pretty good.
oversensitive. They blame guns on mass murders. Those are just inanimate objects. We blame guns on video games and Marilyn Manson's music. Guns don't kill people. iTunes kills people.
Yeah, iTunes.
Yeah, I just kept going at it. Just thought, oh,
That's
they're
pretty good.
promoting cancel culture. Back in my day,
Mm-hmm.
we tried to cancel Twisted Sister because Al Gore's wife thought about
Yep,
sex and a song about fucking doctors.
that's true.
We were the
Okay.
tough ones, man. Actually, like what, 9 years ago, 8 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
didn't what's his name, Josh Feuerstein, have this whole tantrum about Starbucks being
Yes, I remember
anti-Christian?
that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Because
like
they changed their cups. He was like,
yeah,
they're anti-Christmas. I remember that. I made fun of that a lot.
yeah, like
Is the thing, like I
it's
grew up in the 80s and I can look back to me, my memory. I look back at the 80s fondly, and I think it was a great time. But I can also see that I look at it with rose tinted glasses. I look at the history and the news from the time that I remember, but kind of put in the back burner. But when I look at it now, I remember again, and I'm like, oh yeah, there was tons of conflicts going on around the world. Crime was at its height in the 80s in America. Terrible things were going on in the 80s. People kind of were enjoying themselves to get away from all those horrible things that were going on in the 80s. I've had arguments with people who romanticize, a lot of people, especially the trad like right wingers, they romanticize the 50s a lot, but they don't recognize, that's because they're looking back with positive nostalgia where they're only seeing the positives and they're ignoring all the negatives that were on that time, right? It was horrible alcoholism, people, oh, but people got married more and they didn't get divorced. Yeah, but people abuse their wives more, right? People get drunk more and beat their wives, drive drunk and kill kids driving because drinking and driving wasn't even illegal yet. So it's like
Just
that
had
you can look at the positive things, but there's always negatives. No period is better than any other period. It's what you make of where you are now, right? That makes it good or not.
if you had this conversation with H. Pearl Davis, she wouldn't really see your point at all.
No.
That's great. You'll beat those women.
Yeah, beat them. It's fine.
Men need to discipline their wives. So
Mm-hmm.
like, Jesus Christ, this bitch real. Like, I swear to God, I thought she was a parody account because when I saw her profile picture, she
Mm-hmm.
looked pixelated to me. I legit thought she was pixelated.
But she's real.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
real. I thought she was like another Titania McGrath, you
it's
know?
hard to it's hard to pin it on her, what to pin on her. I think a lot of it is stuff she says to get views. She seems very obsessed with growing her brand, right? Whether it's negative or positive promotion, she looks to go after. She got to a lot of stuff for what's his name? Nick Fuentes, having him on. And
Mhm.
then if you pay attention after that, she does both, she plays both sides. She goes on to apologize for having him on, and then later on reverses that and says, I'm glad I had him on and blah blah. So you know what I'm saying? So she satiated one side and then later on satiated the other side, right? So it, we could say maybe she is real, but a lot of it seems kind of fake. It seems like she over exaggerates to try to get more views. Her goal is to become famous. I don't think the views really matter.
You you know what was it? Us, you know the philosopher Slavoj Zizek.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exactly a fan, but I remember hearing like this whole argument he had in the book Violence about like what's some of the most violent thing you can do against a I think it was like a I could be wrong because I didn't actually read the book, but what you can do against like a
Mm-hmm.
business is absolutely nothing. Like if you burn it down, it's just going to get like some insurance money out of it. If you just
Mm-hmm.
completely do nothing, ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist, they're going to lose this attention, they're going to lose money. And I feel like the same logic goes to people like influencers. If you
Mm-hmm.
just ignore them, let's not focus on the dumbass shit they say, let's not focus on the dumbass advice they give,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to lose power.
Yeah, eventually they start dropping subs and stuff and they start losing power if you don't pay attention to them. That's true.
It kind of happened to Milo after he made those
Yeah.
dumbass comments on Joe
Yeah,
Rogan.
true.
We just did not want to hear anything this guy had to say.
Yeah.
He's no longer amusing. He's
Good
kind of a
point.
fucked up asshole. He's clearly in it for the
Hmm.
attention.
And now he's freaking out like, I'm not even gay anymore. Like, what? Like,
Anything.
how are you not gay all of a sudden? That makes no sense.
Yeah, he was really
I think,
desperate for
I don't
that
know if you saw
attention.
the last thing. He went to debate Destiny. And it
Really?
was, yeah, it was really bad. Like Milo was horrible. One, he seemed super drunk or maybe drugged up. And Destiny was upset because he got there early and wasn't even paid for it. He did it as a favor for the place. That wasn't paid, gets there early, was ready to go. And then Milo was like an hour and a half late, even though he was paid for, accommodated, all these things. And he was in the bathroom for like an hour. So they're all like, oh, he was doing drugs in there or something. Then he comes out and he makes a total mockery of the debate, totally straw man's Destiny, doesn't even listen to what the argument is, says that he believes things that he doesn't believe. And it was just ridiculous. I don't think anybody's going to be picking him to debate anymore after that one. It's just a total crapshoot.
He used to be decent when it came to
Yeah.
actual like arguments. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he's always been an attention seeker, obviously, but
Right.
when he actually came to like debating people and talking to them, he at least tried to make
Right.
points. He was one of the next Christopher Hitchens is.
Yeah, you know what it is like he had a point in the things he was saying, but he used the extremism to try to draw attention. But I think at a certain point he lost his point, and then he just tried to keep using the extreme actions to bring attention. But at this point, there was no substance anymore, right? So you're bringing them into an empty shell where they're not hearing any logic or any substance. It's just extremism, extreme talk, just for extreme talk, right? Not for any real reason.
Notice me.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, it was him saying, "Please validate me. Please notice me," which is
Not
sad.
gay.
And you look at him now, and it's just sad to see him this way. Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, he just needs to chill. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just retire, just go to a nice place, man. I'm sure you got enough money.
Hmm.
Just live life, buy some groceries, watch some Netflix, just chill, man.
Yeah, why
Just
not,
live.
right? Well, now he wants to be a born again Christian who's not gay anymore. So I guess he could do that. I don't know. I think it's kind of strange to be gay for so long in your life and then not be, right. It's kind of like saying, me, I've been straight my whole life. It's kind of like saying now I'm just going to suddenly become gay for no reason, right? How does that happen? It's weird.
Just drop your sexuality like a religion.
Yeah, just totally switch it for no reason. I'm suddenly attracted to the opposite thing I was attracted to. It doesn't make any sense. I think it's just like him flailing and grabbing at straws to try to gain some stable ground, I guess, in his life because his life has just spiraled into chaos. Then, like, bringing up Destiny, I kind of like watching him. I don't agree with him completely, but I do like his debate style, and I do like because he is one of the most popular streamers. Everyone goes to him, right? So it's like I
Mhm.
like his channel not because of him, but because his channel ends up being a nexus of all arguments on the internet, right? So if you watch him long enough, he's going to have, he's open to having any. He's had Nick Fuentes on. He's had, he's talked to Pearl. He's talked to all these people. He'll talk to anyone, and you get to hear all these people's arguments. And where I don't fully agree with him, he is a kind of a person who I feel like tries to get down to the truth or the right argument of things, right? So I enjoy watching him for that. That I could see what all these other people's arguments are and what the truth, try to get to the truth of it. I think he's supposed to debate Ben Shapiro soon,
Okay.
which I think is going to be odd. I don't think they disagree on enough for them to debate. But, I mean, Sean debated Destiny recently, and it was kind of weird. And I think for the same reason, I think they don't disagree enough. Where Destiny's kind of like a centered left kind of person, Sean's kind of a centered right kind of person. So they kind of meet in the middle for some things, for most things. So they had to argue Biden versus Trump. But I know Sean's not even a Trump fan. He's on the right, so he would pick Trump over Biden, but he's not even that big of a fan of Trump, right? So it came out kind of weird because it is kind of like he's got to just devil's advocate, right? But me knowing Sean, I know that he doesn't really believe all these things he's saying. But you got to have an argument, right? So what else are you gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of Ben Shapiro, how do you feel about the whole situation with him and Candace Owens?
Oh yeah, that's weird. In general, the whole religious thing to me is weird. So Candace Owens just suddenly spouting scripture is the strangest thing ever. She's never done that before. I think she
Crisis
did
King.
a Joe Rogan interview one time where she said she wasn't even that religious or something. Like,
Really?
yeah, like well, she hasn't been on Joe Rogan for a long time because he said that she was full of crap and he'd never have her on again after the first time she went on. But it was during that interview she said something about that she wasn't even that religious. So it's very strange that now she would suddenly spout scripture. Like, huh? Why? And what Ben Shapiro I thought said, if me paying you gets between you and your God, you can quit. Like, that's not, and people took that as an attack. And I'm like, that's not an attack. That's just him saying, if you don't like the job, you can go look for another job, but you're welcome to stay as well, right? It goes either way, right? So the other owner, what's it, Boring or whatever his name is, he put out a thing saying we aren't gonna fire her. We pride ourselves on letting the content creators say what they want to say, which I think is cool.
That is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I remember her interview on Joe Rogan. I never watched the whole thing. I just remember
Mm-hmm.
the part where they started talking about climate change, which got really popular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like seeing this situation between them and seeing like how many conservatives are kind of splitting. Like I think people like Lauren Chin and Charlie Kirk were defending her over
Mm-hmm.
Shapiro, even though I know like Kirk is pretty pro-Israel guy.
Mm-hmm.
Fine with me. I'm kind of getting a new atheist vibe with conservatism nowadays because new atheism is pretty big early like 2000s to 2010s.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had like Rebecca Watson who fucking destroys new atheism
Yeah.
by me tooing the whole movement.
Yeah.
Somehow she me
Over
too
a
the
cup
whole
of
movement.
coffee with Richard Dawkins in an elevator where he's like, you want to get a cup of coffee? Ah, you raped me. Yeah. That's
Like
classic.
yeah, I never thought about it, but can you imagine being that guy? Like, oh God, I destroy this whole fucking
Oh
movement
god.
over a goddamn coffee?
That's
Like, yeah,
horrible.
He must feel
over.
like such a retard. I feel so bad for him.
And then the other person was PZ Myers, right? That started the Atheist Plus or whatever, and that
Yeah, I
started
don't.
splitting atheism. And that's weird to, atheism is such a broad concept that it's weird to start putting other things in it and say, oh, you're not part of this group if you don't agree, believe these other things. It's like literally the point of atheism is to not believe other things, right? Is to be open to believing things, to what, and be skeptical about things. So
Yeah,
it's
like
strange.
yeah. So like that's what I liked about like older point of inquiry podcast episodes because it's always like talking about like all these superstitious nonsense
Mm-hmm.
and all these like rational religious beliefs and here like these experts who've written books and essays and whatever on it. And it's like here's why it's doubtful or hard to believe. And they had Robert M. Price as one of the hosts, which was great because he is not clearly no progressive. He is a Christian atheist. He is a conservative Republican and his openly Trump supporter. But from what I heard was that they actually fired him because he voted for Bush, and really that has nothing to do with secularism or atheism.
Well,
Because if you follow his work, you know his very popular for his Christ Smith theory promotion, one of the
okay.
biggest Christ Smithicists.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I love Robert Price. Do you
No,
actually know him?
I don't really know who that is.
Oh, really? Yeah, he
Robert
was on
Price.
yeah, Thomas interviewed him on the AFL live streams.
Oh, I might have missed that one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was so happy because I
I'll
kept
check that.
asking for him.
Yeah, I'll check that out. I don't know much about him. I'm open to hearing what he's got to say.
Yeah, his grades. I got to meet him at CPAC last year, which was awesome. I was awkward, but it was awesome. Yeah. I felt kind of happy about that live stream because they one of my comments Thomas read and they actually clipped it out and
Mhm.
posted it as its own separate video,
Oh,
which
nice.
it felt kind of cool, like because it was on I mentioned that Robert Price was the first person to make me question the existence of historical Jesus. And because yeah, before then I just assumed, yeah, it makes sense. Jesus probably existed. But
Mhm.
then I started listening to Robert Price. I'm like, yeah, yeah, now I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. I remember reading about one guy. I doubt that's the same person, as I don't remember who the author was, but he put out a book maybe like 10 years ago or something where he was saying his idea is that the Romans wanted to quell the Jewish rebellion. So they basically took the Jewish Bible and created a story to say the Messiah came back, right? And they created this false story and basically inventing Jesus to basically quell the insurrection, and tell them like your Messiah came back, everything's fine, like stop rebelling, And then which to me would be funny because then in the long run it was the Romans who spread it more than anyone else and believed it more than anyone else, right? So in trying to quell a rebellion, they've invented a religion for a people that they eventually 600 years later fell into and spread around the world. It's pretty crazy if that is true.
Yeah, I got my own theory. What if after Jesus died, he didn't actually resurrect? What happens was a bunch of aliens came in and they abducted the
It
body and it looked like he was flying. And they
looked like
just
it was
assumed,
they took them. Yeah,
yeah, and people just assume because we don't know what a
mm-hmm.
UFO is that he resurrected.
It's like the ancient aliens theory.
Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah, you don't
Proven
know. You can
wrong.
never tell. You can never tell.
Yeah,
That
checkmate
story is
aliens.
just strange in general because the only people who witnessed his resurrection are three women. Who's to say that they witnessed what they witnessed? Who knows?
Yeah, I
Or at
mean,
least that's what the book says. There might have not even been three. Who knows? Most of the Bible's written decades after his death, so it's strange that most people don't recognize that. Like if you talk to a religious person, they don't recognize that most of the stuff that they read about Jesus is written decades, if not 100 years after his death, right? They have no concept of that. And on top of that, the Bible's also been altered and edited so many times by the Nicene
yeah.
Council, by many other moments of time, King James versions and all these things. There's literally a library in France that has all these extra chapters that are not in the Bible, just sitting there that nobody even knows about that's religious. And some people go visit it probably just like people from like the Vatican or something. But there's a bunch of books there that are never been in the Bible, were taken out centuries ago and just sit in some library that nobody looks at, you know. It's like, do the religious people even know that there's extra books that they've never read? They just take this book as the full word, right? Testament. Right? It's a huge history. Even the Old Testament was created at a time where written language didn't exist yet. So it was passed down for centuries verbally until written language came around, and then they wrote it down. Who's to say that stayed, you know, we've all played the game of telephone in kindergarten and first grade. We know that when you verbally pass things down, the story changes and changes and changes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's called a Chinese whisper. You gotta like
How's
whisper
that?
the
Okay.
story. Yeah, well, you whisper the story to the next person, and then yeah, that's a completely different story.
Yeah. By the time you get to the last person, the story's changed completely, right? So it's like, yeah, who says that any of the story is accurate? There's no way to know, right?
Yeah, I mean, to me,
And
that seemed like a really strong evidence that it wasn't created by a perfect God,
mhm.
because like there are so many better ways to spread messages, and he could literally just
Right.
make you born with that knowledge. He could
Mhm.
literally just tell everybody, but instead he picks just a couple of illiterate morons in the Middle East and just goes like, "Hey, just try to remember this and tell
Mhm.
everybody," and then make sure they try to remember it and call it a
Yeah.
day.
Most religions, I would fathom to say all religions contradict themselves at some point and show, like, you could be an atheist. Some people say, oh, but you're an atheist, so that means you believe there's no God. Well, not necessarily. An atheist is just somebody who doesn't have a belief in a God, right? So you can believe there is a, you know, people call that agnostic, but agnostic is just another form of atheism, right? Like
Yeah,
if you don't believe, you don't believe, period. That's it. But if you don't know, you don't believe, right? So it ends up being the same thing. But the concept is like, if there is a God, nobody's gotten it right. Every single thing that's been written that you can read can easily be contradicted, and you can find where they contradict, and you can debunk basically every religion right through that. So now, if there is a God, who knows? None of us know. There's no way to find out, right? It's probably something so far above us that humanity would probably never even understand it, right?
yeah. Reminds me of what Christopher Hitchens once wrote, since it's obviously inconceivable that all religions can be right, the most reasonable
Mhm.
conclusion is that they're all wrong.
Is that they're all wrong. Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah, right.
point.
Exactly.
The
And
fact
it
that,
really drives me nuts when you get into an argument with like a Christian or something, and they just act as if their religion is 100% true, right? And you're like, but what about these other religions? They're just wrong. And then you look at Christianity, it has thousands of denominations and different beliefs, right? So it's like your Christianity is right. What about their Christianity, right?
yeah, the fact that it's not clear is it's obviously not true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like if this is what they believe, or to an extent anyways, if they think there is an invisible guy in the sky and his son is Jesus, but
Mm-hmm.
they just want to live their lives, it's fine with me, but I'm not gonna pretend it makes sense when it clearly
Mm-hmm.
doesn't.
I think one of the craziest parts of Christianity is how old it is and that people still believe it. Because it's like, you know, people at that time had so much less knowledge than us now, right? So we're going to trust the witnesses and the books written by people from 2000 years ago that lived in a desert with zero technology, zero concept of science. You know, when lightning struck, they still thought it was like a god throwing a lightning ball, down to earth. When it rained, they still thought it was coming from the heavens, from God, right? We can understand now that it's rain is clouds accumulating water and dropping it back down on us, right? So it's insane that these people don't conceptualize that. Why am I believing in this thing from over 2000 years ago? Another issue I have is, you know, my parents are Peruvian. So
Mhm.
when I was young, I would think about my ancestry, and I would go, so these Incan people, and they're in Peru back in these ancient times before the Europeans came, you have to love Jesus to go to heaven. So I'm like, so everybody before the Europeans came and brought the Bible over to the Americas, all of those people just went to hell. Like there was no chance for them ever to go to heaven because they had no knowledge of Jesus or God. You know, they had their own gods because they never had any concept. So it's strange to think, oh yeah, these people came over and now these people are saved. But for centuries, and centuries, they have hundreds of generations that just all went to hell and never got a chance. What kind of God would do that, right? Create people just to send them in hell to hell because they never had a chance to know who God is to love them, right? Like, it made no sense. Even as a child, that was one of my first inklings of me being like, this doesn't make sense, right? Something's off here. Like it just doesn't add up.
Yeah, I remember I had like no religious upbringing as a
Mm.
kid, so but I obviously believed in God because everybody else did.
I
And
say I can see that.
yeah, so I thought to myself, like I always had that one question, like who created God? And apparently a friend of my brother's told him that the angels created God, actually. I have no
Huh.
idea what his source was. So I kept going back. It's like, okay, so who created the angels? And it was like, I
Hmm.
don't know. Because like I thought like one had to start at
Yeah,
some
one had to go
point.
first, right? But it's
Yeah.
not true. The Bible says God created the angels, so it's not the angels creating God, right? That would be totally backwards. They do that though. Like creationists and stuff would use that argument where they're like, "Oh, so you're saying something came from nothing, and just a big bang happened, everything came from nothing? That's impossible. That's why God makes sense." And then you're like, "Well, where did God come from then?" Right? So you're saying God came from nothing, and that's impossible, right? So that argument doesn't work for either one. Just doesn't make sense. Even though that it's always a straw man because science never says everything came from nothing, right? Like that's
Yeah.
we just don't know what came before the Big Bang.
Yeah, we really don't. Nobody pretends
Mm-hmm.
to. I remember somebody actually did use that argument against me once in high
Mm-hmm.
school because teenagers are fucking assholes, all of us.
Yeah.
Um, and I asked him, okay, so where did God come from? And then he tells me, well, God, nowhere because God's infinite. He could just always exist. And then I said, well, why can't that be true for the universe?
Mm-hmm.
And he
Okay.
said to me, because it isn't. And then I said, how do you know? Are you a cosmologist? Had to be that fucking asshole again.
But that is the circular reasoning you need to be religious. It does go in circles. You can't, like Christianity itself is meant to be believed by faith. So if you actually had something to show as proof, that should take away your faith instead, right? Because faith is the whole point of faith is to believe it without proof, right? It's like I have
Yeah.
faith this is going to happen. I got no proof it'll happen, but I have faith it will. So the whole concept is that there's no proof for it. So having proof already eliminates faith in the thing, right? So it's kind of an odd, like I guess oxymoron that comes out of that. I kind
Yeah,
of
like
wish I used to have a lot of fun debating creationists. I kind of wish that would come back because that was so much fun a long time ago doing debating those guys. Like my latest thing has been kind of like the flat earthers because they're religious, and that's kind of been like what the creationist has been dwindled down to is being flat earthers who believe there's a firmament and that life is like 60, what would they say, like 6,000 years old instead of
yeah.
millions. Yeah, those are the ones. Basically, the creationists were defeated to the point that it's flat earthers carrying the torch for them now. But those people are even more ridiculous.
Yeah, I never been much of a debater myself,
Mm.
though. I remember when I was 13 and I was learning about like the new atheists and I was going through my phase. I was like, oh
Mm-hmm.
man, when I grow up, I want to have these debates and I want to like
Mm-hmm.
own these people. And then I tried that in school and I did end up getting into a debate with this one kid. But I was 13. I had no idea how to fucking argue. So I just
Yeah.
thought if I just yell, that'll mean I'm right. And
Yeah, that's a lot of the times we see that on the internet. A lot of the people think that debating is just whoever yells the most or whoever has the most fans, that's who wins, And it gets ridiculous to a point where you'll even argue about that. And it's like, no, the person won. No, but he yelled more, so he won. It's like, no. But yeah, I
uh,
mean, the truth is to, go for whatever is the best argument, right? Whatever makes the most sense.
yeah, I don't
for
know.
for most people, the best way to debate is you just need to be very confident in your knowledge of the topic. If you're not, you're gonna lose, right? Because
Mhm.
the main thing is you really need to know the content. This is why Sean is very good at debating. Destiny's very good at debating. He'll do, right now he's going through debates for Israel, the Palestine stuff. He's been reading the history nonstop, 12 hours a day on stream. He's going through reading books on stream, everything, just absorbing as much knowledge as he can. And that's kind of the only way you could really debate. Because in a debate, you can't really give citations and stuff. There's no time for that, right? So you have to be really confident in what you're saying and be sure that you know. When Destiny first debated Sean, I have a clip of this on my channel where Destiny was hanging out with Lauren Southern, I think, and she brought up Sean, and he go and Destiny Destiny says something like he hates debating Sean because Sean knows what he's talking about. So he's like, I have to put in the extra work to do so much more research to go against Sean because he really knows his stuff. Right? And that's really all it is. Debate is just you really knowing the topic you're debating. Right?
Because I've been through like very few debates my whole
Yeah.
life. I mean, like ever since like what I was telling you about when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that one kind of scarred me for life. Because what happened
Yeah.
was the whole fucking classroom got involved.
Oh no.
Yeah, then
Yeah,
like
when you're young, it's not as easy. I mean, teenagers, like, I think we know, your brain's not even fully developed till you're like
no,
25. Yeah. And
yeah,
on top of that, a teenager, like I said, you have to know the topics and be very confident in it. Teenagers are not known for their confidence. And
yeah,
two, you
definitely.
have barely any experience in life yet, right? So you haven't really gained all that knowledge yet, right?
Yeah, I remember I was reminiscing about it with one of my friends in high school. I was like, I remember in what was it, social studies class in eighth grade, we just sat at the back just talking, and then he just reminded me, remember when the entire class ganged up on you because you were an
Oh, yeah.
atheist? And I was like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't want
good
to think about
times,
that
good times.
one.
I think he felt kind of bad when he said
Mm-hmm.
that because he kind of like frowned for a second. He said, I didn't care.
Mm-hmm. It's not easy. When I was a teenager, it's the same thing. I mean, I come from a Hispanic background, which, Latinos are very Catholic. And then I also lived in a city that was like 80% Latino. So everybody was Catholic, right? So when I'm a teenager, first starting to question these things, starting to come out of it, I had the same exact experience where anytime I would bring it up, I'd get ganged up on by a bunch of people telling me, no, you're wrong because of this and that. And meanwhile, I'm just asking questions, right? I'm just trying to find my way through the proper answers and stuff because it just didn't add up to me, right?
I my last girlfriend, she dumped me last March, unfortunately, but
Oh,
she's actually Mexican.
mm-hmm,
She's an agnostic, and she's not American at all. Like she's like 100% Mexican. She
mm-hmm,
barely speaks English and lived in Mexico her whole life. What I thought was interesting, she does have like a Catholic family, and her family's like
mm-hmm,
religious, but she herself is like she told me an agnostic, and politically she's always been kind of center left, definitely anti-woke.
mm-hmm.
Swear to God, she was the perfect woman.
Yeah.
Of I remember I was looking this up just out of curiosity, the religion in Mexico, and they're clearly like mostly Christian, which I
Mm-hmm,
obviously Um,
mm-hmm,
what I found out was that the atheist population in Mexico was 0.9%. The agnostic population was 0.1%. So technically it's just overall 1%.
yeah.
She was literally just 1% of her
Yeah. So
country.
she was a rarity. Yeah. In that
Yeah,
country. Super unique.
yeah. Like I had no idea about her religious background. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
we would just talk randomly,
That
which
goes
was
into what I was saying about the Europeans bringing Christianity to South America and Central America,
Mhm.
right? So they conquer, they force a religion on these people. And now those people are the most fervent believers of that religion, but they never think back to go, what happened to my ancestors that before the Europeans came? They all went to hell. Like the same question I asked, how come none of them asked that, right? Like it's so strange that the most hardest believers of this religion now are the people who were subjugated and made forced to believe it, basically, right? Under penalty of death. In Peru, when they were conquered, the Spaniards forced them to believe Christianity. If you didn't, after a while, they would just kill you. If they caught you like not practicing it, they'd kill you. So it's
yeah.
like it literally was forced upon these people, and they know that history that it was forced upon them, but yet they still want to believe it. It's so strange to me.
Yeah, with my people, it's I think they're kind of unique because I'm actually Albanian.
Okay.
So if you know, I'm not sure how much you know about Albanian history, but we're a Muslim majority country,
Mm-hmm. Was
and
Albania part of the former USSR, or was it a separate country before the whole time?
think it was separate. I don't think it was part of
Okay.
USSR. I could be wrong. I'm not gonna lie,
That's
I'm not
okay.
much. Okay, but yeah, it's like the Ottomans conquered us and enslaved
Mm-hmm.
our people, and that's why we have a Muslim majority.
Okay.
But
Makes sense.
a few decades later, we basically got taken over by communism instead, in which
Mm-hmm.
our dictator Enver Hoxha actually tried to ban religion and apparently declared Albania the first atheist country. But and this continued for a while until 1991 or two. It became a democracy, and now we're a free country.
Mhm.
And we're still a Muslim majority nowadays. But what I think is interesting is like if you actually go to Albania, and you can clearly see it's Muslim with like the mosques and the call to prayer every night. If you live near, which I heard every fucking night. Um, but you actually like pay attention to the people, like they just don't give a fuck about religion. Like I
Mhm.
don't remember any women wearing hijabs. You go to a beach, these chicks are very revealed. If you talk to the
Kind of
people,
how Iran was like that too, right? Before they got taken over by a dictator in the 70s. But before that, they were doing the same thing. They were starting to become very westernized. It was kind of a hippie era, so they were wearing like hippie clothes and going, wearing bikinis to the beach. But then a dictator came in and brought back his Sharia law and cracked out all of it. And now Iran is like super Sharia law now.
yeah, I mean, this is my parents. They're my family's all Muslim,
Mhm.
but the ones that live in America, I think it's pretty interesting because like we're secular, we're Muslim, but we're also
Mhm.
conservative. I think that's kind of a funny mix.
Yeah, that is a weird mix. Do you find it odd or to be at odds with them? Do they pick Muslim countries over like Israel and stuff like that, and you find to be at odds with your family, or
Not
or
really.
they don't really think about that stuff and don't really talk about
The only one who has real political opinions is my dad.
it?
My
Mhm.
mom just tries to stay away from it, but they're both registered Republicans and Muslims.
Mhm.
I don't remember ever having a conversation about Israel with my dad. I think I did one time. I don't remember what his case was, but I remember he openly talked about how much he likes the Jews.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like
Okay.
he's like, oh, the Jews are good people. They're
I mean,
great.
there's another thing that I say. If you just look at the region, they're the only ones there that are like cleaning up the region. The area had no water; it's all salt water. The Jews are the ones who came and figured out how to desalinate the water, create an aqueduct system. Bring technology, everything that is in that region that's advanced or good. It comes from Israel, right? Like everyone
Yeah.
around it is a struggling country, right? And yet they still want to attack them. Is it a jealousy? But I think we all know that there's a history that they want the whole region
Mhm.
to be Muslim, right, or Arab, either way.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only Jewish country in the entire planet.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very secular. They're free. They're
Yeah,
not perfect,
yeah, of
but
course.
they're the
Mm-hmm.
best. They're the best
But
over there.
they're the best country in that region. I don't
Yeah.
understand people's hatred of it. They're like the America of the Middle East, right?
Hmm.
Basically. But
As Americans gonna get.
well, it's getting a little late. I think I'm gonna have to get going, but I enjoyed this. And if you ever want to do this again, let me know. We'll have another conversation.
Thank you.
I'll
This is
have a
great.
camera then so we could both be on camera.
Yeah, I'm already regretting my showing my face because I just do not like the camera.
It's all good. You got to get used to it at some point.
I hope so. Yeah, this is great. I bought Zoom Pro for this. This is totally worth it because I did not want to constantly make you call me like three, four times.
It's all good.
Or
But
yeah,
thanks for having me on, man. It's very enjoyable.
thank you.